नमः। ओम विष्णु पादाय कृष्ण पृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी नित्य नामने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देश तारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री द्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासुदि गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। Shall we start? Text 10. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Yena Havava Kalau Manjupasada Deva Maya Mumhita Swavidhi.
Yena Havava Kalau Manjupasada Deva Maya Mumhita Swavidhi.
Yoga Shaucha Charitra Vihina Deva Helananya Apavratani Nijechaya.
योग शोच चारित्र विहीना देव प्रवृत्तानि निज निजेच्छया
ग्रहणाना अस्नाना नाचमना शौच केशोल्लुंचनादिनी कलिना धर्म।
घृणाना
बहुलेनोपहत धियो ब्रह्म ब्राह्मण यज्ञ पुरुष लोक विदूषका प्रायेण भविष्यन्ति।
बहुलेनोपहत धियो
ब्रह्म ब्राह्मण यज्ञ पुरुषो लोक विदूषका प्रायेण भविष्यन्ति।
Yes.
May I read, Prabhuji?
Yes, please.
Thank you. Hare Krishna. Prabhupada ji ki jai. Translation. Those who are the lowest amongst men and divided by the illusion energy of the Supreme Lord will give up the original Varnashram dharma and its rules and regulations. They will abandon bathing 3 times daily and worshipping the Lord. Abandoning cleanliness and neglecting the Supreme Lord, they will accept nonsensical principles. Not regularly bathing or washing their mouths regularly, they will always remain unclean and they will pluck out their hair. Following a concocted religion, they will flourish. During this age of Kali, people are more inclined to irreligious systems. Consequently, these people will naturally deride the Vedic authority and the followers of the Vedic authority, the Brahmanas, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and the devotees. Purport. Presently, the hippies in the Western country fit this description. They are irresponsible and unregulated. They do not bathe, and they deride standard Vedic knowledge. They concoct new lifestyles and religions. There are many hippie groups at the present moment, but they are originated from King Arhat, who imitated the activities of Lord Rishabdev, who was situated on the Paramhansa stage. King Arhat did not care for the fact that although Lord Rishabdev acted like a madman, his stool and urine were nonetheless aromatic, so much so that they nicely scented the countrywide for miles around. The followers of King Arhat went under the name Jains, and they were later followed by many others, particularly by the hippies, who are more or less offshoots of Mayavad philosophy because they think themselves the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Such people do not respect the real followers of the Vedic principles, the ideal Brahmanas. Nor do they have respect for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Supreme Brahman. Due to the influence of this age of Kali, they are apt to concoct false religious systems. Thank you, Ji. Hare Krishna, Guruji.
Hare Krishna, thank you very much. So, you see, in the 17th chapter of Gita, Krishna is saying that the faith by which one considers religion to be irreligion and irreligion to be religion is to be considered a faith in the mode of goodness, a mode of passion. So Kali Yuga is exactly like that. And, like we may think, chant Hare Krishna and be happy, the holy name will mitigate everything. It is true, the holy name has absolute strength, but there must be the purity in chanting and there must be proper faith in the chanting. Otherwise, that chanting would be counterproductive. So we see, even in our movement also, so many people deride Srila Prabhupada. So many people say, oh, this is, too strict, too rigid. I just like chanting on prasadam. I don't like to read philosophy. All this is in the mode of passion. This is exactly hippie culture. Because singing is easy, you just have to rhythmically keep on repeating, or eating is definitely very enjoyable. But there are rules and regulations for that. Like Srila Rupa Goswami says, Atyahara prayasascha. We have discussed this yesterday also. Atyahar. So you see, Atyahar means, like Keshan Prabhu was also explaining this thing. Same thing, eating too much quantity or too much quality of food. Making very opulent prasadam and taking it, or eating lots and lots of prasadam. So Prabhupada himself, when in 1968, when Brahmanand Prabhu, Gargamuni Prabhu were there, they would take a lot of prasadam. So in the beginning, Prabhupada always encouraged. But then he said, brahmacharis should not eat so much. But Brahmanand Prabhu said, but Prabhupada, you told us that you should eat till your neck. Prabhupada said, yeah, at that time you were new, you were contaminated. But you should now understand that a devotee should take only as much as sufficient as to keep his soul and body together. So that's the principle. We have to understand the spirit of the principle. Simply following the ritual would be niyamagra. Following the rules and regulations for the sake of following without understanding the principle behind them. Prabhupada said, eat. It doesn't mean that we keep on eating now also, because that is for the beginners. But mature devotees should eat very less. Simple prasadam, very little quantity, just to keep the body and soul together. If one overindulges in taste or the quantity of prasadam, one will become materially bound. Then prasadam will be only in the mode of passion. Like once, it was in the US. So the devotees once asked Prabhupada, Prabhupada, like you said, yes, that does this drinking of milk improve the quality of the brain? So Prabhupada said, yes. So devotees started drinking a lot of milk, like liters and liters of milk. And Prabhupada then immediately stopped it. He said, no, 1 glass, not more than that. More than that is in the mode of passion. And that will simply, increase your propensity to eat and sleep. So we have to understand the proper principle. So King Arhat here, he just copied the external activities of Maharaj Rishabdev without understanding the principle behind it. So we must also, when we are following Krishna consciousness, we have to be very conscious. I mean, that's why Prabhupada called it consciousness. You don't do it unconsciously. So we are chanting, so we should meditate on the holy name. We should pray to the holy name. And what we should pray, that is also mentioned in the books. O energy of the Lord, O Lord, engage me in your service. Meditate, like helplessly praying, like a child praying for his mother. Pray helplessly. Then when you are taking prasadam, consider it to be prasada. Look at the word itself, prasada, it's mercy. So if someone is giving you mercy, you don't abuse it. Not that you eat and eat until you become sick. No, take only that much which is sufficient to keep you alive. And spare others, prasad for others. So that's mercy. So understand the proper spirit behind the bhakti, process of bhakti. Like we experience in our own movement also. So many times if you're quoting Prabhupada or you're talking about Srila Prabhupada, you are seen as a fanatic or some kind of an old-fashioned person, or worse still, sometimes even called a Ritvik. So all this is just nonsense, Devotional service in the mode of passion without understanding the real principle behind bhakti. So we have to be very, very careful. Otherwise, we'll never get out of the 10 aparadhas. So if we don't understand the proper context of all the activities that we are doing, we're only wasting our time. Because that will have some benefit, but it will only remain at a material level. It will not advance in bhakti. So if we have to advance, we have to be very careful. So this, like for example, we see about Jainism here. So Jainism is just a kind of aberration. I mean, eventually it just becomes, be good, do good to others. And that's about it. And be vegetarian. Like in the West, there's a joke. Hindu means no beef. Like millions of gods and no beef. That's Hinduism. And it's sad because even most Hindus don't know anything beyond this. Many gods and no beef. So you see, this is foolishness. This is not Vedic religion. Vedic religion means varnashram. If we are living, we are eating chicken burger and we are traveling to Western countries, we are wearing Western clothes, and we are just not eating beef, then that bindi, sari, that dhoti, kurta, all that is nonsense. That has no meaning at all. Because we don't really understand why we are doing this. So the purport of this verse is that we have to understand the process. Otherwise, it's all Kaitava Dharma. It's just like some imitation. It becomes a nonsense physical activity. Yeah. Text 11. ते च ह्य अर्वाकतन्यया निज लोक यात्रया नथ परंपरायाश्वस्तास् तमस्य अंधे स्वयं एव प्रपतिष्यन्ति.
ते च यार्वाकतनया निजलोकयात्रयान्ध परम्परस्यस्तास् तमस्यन्धे स्वयमेव प्रपतिष्यन्ति.
मध्यन्ते स्वयमेव प्रपतिष्यन्ति.
Yeah, so low-class people, due to their gross ignorance, introduce a system of religion that deviates from the Vedic principles. Following their own mental concoctions, they are automatically fall down into the darkest regions of existence. In this connection, one may see Bhagavad Gita chapter 16, where there's a description of the downfall of the Asuras. Verse 16, chapter 16, verse 16 and 23. 16 and 16, 23. Yeah. So what are those verses here? So here in 16, 17, what is Krishna saying? Atma sambhavita stabdha dhanamana madanvita jante nama yajnaiste dambhe na vidhi purvakam. Self-complacent and always impudent, deluded by wealth and false prestige, they sometimes perform sacrifices in the name only without following any rules and regulations. So here Prabhupada is writing in the purport, they make a show of performing sacrifices, or they worship the demigods or manufacture their own god. Common men advertise them as God and worship them, and by the foolish, they are considered advanced in the principles of religion or in the principles of spiritual knowledge. They take the dress of renounced order of life and engage in all nonsense in that dress. The demons do not. Actually, there are so many restrictions for one who has renounced the world. The demons, however, do not care for such restrictions. They think that whatever path one can create is one's own path. This is avidhi purvakam, without following the rules and regulations. Avidhi purvakam, just one's own concoction. And in text 23, again Krishna is explaining, Yah shastra vidhim utrajya vartate kama karata nasa siddhim avapnoti na sukham na param gatim. One who disregards spiritual injunctions and acts according to his own whims attains neither perfection nor happiness nor the supreme destination. It's very simple. If you do not follow the rules and regulations, how will you achieve the destination? Look at it this way. Suppose you want to study medicine, but you think that, okay, pharmacology is a very difficult subject. You can't really understand the compounds and all. Then how will you prescribe medication? Most of the people don't know this. For example, you take a tablet of paracetamol. So very small fraction of that paracetamol is actual medicine, which is known as the API, the active pharmaceutical ingredient. This API is so potent that if you take a tablet of this API, it will immediately kill you. So it's diluted to a very large extent. I think it's 100 times dilution or 1,000 times dilution. It's a very high dilution. And then that is how the medicine works. But if a doctor doesn't understand medicine and he prescribes something, he'll probably end up killing the patient or at least causing him harm. So that's the way it is. So if you do not understand the process of bhakti, you will never attain the result. Sometimes people say, oh, brahmacharya is too difficult. Well, then bhakti is impossible. Or someone may think, oh, that too many rules and regulations. Bhakti should be more free. Like in the West, for example, in the United States, there is this particular type of movement within our movement which believes in very free living. So males and females, they live freely together and they all do bhakti together. But that is nothing but Sahajiyasm. Because even Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Srila Prabhupada writes that Mahaprabhu, even though he joked and played with so many people, Mahaprabhu very cautiously maintained the principles of etiquettes of dealing with women. For example, as Krishna, the Lord was mixing around freely with gopis. But as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he maintained that distinction. He never frivolously behaved in the presence of ladies. Mahaprabhu displayed this behavior. And he, similarly, after taking sannyas, he maintained very strict differences. Like, for example, it is mentioned that when Mahaprabhu was in Nilachal, the devotees from Navadvip would travel every year to meet him. And Mahaprabhu would host them there. And they would spend a lot of time together. They would all enjoy his association. But there again, the ladies were not allowed to meet Mahaprabhu. And even their name was not pronounced in front of Mahaprabhu. That's how strictly he maintained the principles. Now, Mahaprabhu is certainly beyond all of this. But still, to show the path, and especially for us, because we are the followers of Mahaprabhu, our movement follows in the line of Mahaprabhu. Therefore, of all the people, we must be very particular. So in this case, if one deviates from the principles of Shastras, one will never attain the result. One may think that he's advancing, but he's not. So then why is it mentioned here that they can attain neither perfection nor happiness? So one may think, oh, demons are happy. They have so much wealth and everything. But that happiness is tainted. What is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu saying? Krishna Bhakta Nishkam Ataiva Shanta. So if one has not followed the rules and regulations of Vedas, he'll not be Nishkam. There will be so many anxieties. Adhidhaivik, Adhibhautik, Adhyatmik anxieties will always be there. And not only that, Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadhi will also be causing trouble to such a demonic personality. Therefore, it is advisable that one follows the rules and regulations very strictly. Otherwise, this spiritual advancement will just remain an illusion. The less one is affected. In the 6th chapter, actually, Krishna is explaining what is liberation. It's very simple. When one is not affected by material anxieties, one is to be considered in a liberated state of existence. So if one is becoming more and more free from material anxieties, one should understand that he is progressing on the path of liberation. Text 12. Ayam avataro rajaso papluta kaivalyo pashikshanatha.
Ayam avataro rajaso
Kaivalyo
pashikshanatha.
Yeah. Yes, please.
May I go?
Yes, please.
Right. Translation. In this age of Kali, people are overwhelmed by the modes of passion and ignorance. Lord Rishabh incarnated himself to deliver them from the clutches of Maya. Purport. The symptoms of Kali Yuga are predicted in the 12th canto, 3rd chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam. Lavanyam Kesha Dharanam. It is predicted how fallen souls will behave. They will keep their hair long and consider themselves very beautiful, or they will pluck out their hair as the Jains do. They will keep themselves unclean and will not wash their mouths. Jains refer to Lord Rishabh as their original purpose, his scepter. If such people are serious followers of Rishabh, they must also take his instructions. In the 5th chapter of this canto, Rishabh gave his 100 sons instructions whereby they would become free from the clutches of Maya. If one actually follows Rishabh, he will certainly be delivered from the clutches of Maya and return home back to Godhead. If one strictly follows the instructions of Rishabh given in the 5th chapter, he will certainly be liberated. Lord Rishabh incarnated specifically to deliver these fallen souls. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna, thank you. So, like today, if you ask anyone Jain, what is the meaning of religion? They'll just say, oh, religion means no onion, no garlic, and no carrot and no ginger also. That's Jain. Jains are only famous for their food now. So in the 5th chapter of this canto, Lord Rishabh instructed his sons. He said, do not seek any material wealth. Do not, become attached to this material world. And, and be kind to all living entities. My dear sons, you should not envy any living entity. And then, okay, I am fully opulent, almighty, and superior to Lord Brahma and Indra, the king of heavenly planets. I am also the bestower of all happiness obtained in the heavenly kingdom and by liberation. Nonetheless, the Brahmanas do not seek material comforts from me. They are very pure and do not want to possess anything. They simply engage in my devotional service. What is the need of their asking for material benefits from anyone else? But today, if you see, Jain community is the richest in India. So they are actually quite crazy after material wealth. So you see, this is what happens. So actually, even this Arhat, even he remained like a poverty-stricken man. But Jains today do not follow any of those instructions, even instructions of King Arhat. So you can see that if the Vedic tradition is broken, then it becomes completely broken. Vedic tradition is like a crystal, like if you have a glass bowl, you just try to put a small hole in it, the whole bowl will crack apart because it's like a crystal. So that's how religion is. If you break one rule, then all the rules will be eventually broken. So in the process of bhakti also, if you compromise on something, everything else will be compromised. As they say in English, give a camel an inch and he'll take an L. So it's exactly like that. So if you compromise on any principles of bhakti, because of the offenses generated thereof, everything will become compromised. Yes. So if one wants to follow Rishabdev, and if Jains really want to understand, they should study Bhagavatam, especially the 5th chapter of the 5th canto. They should read it and they should understand what are the teachings of their own, the preceptor, chief preceptor. And in this way, they will also be delivered. So this is like, this is a deviation from the religious path. After Mahaprabhu departed, the Sahajiyas came about. And they all claim to be followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Like if you go to, especially this Nilachal, that is Puri or Mayapur, you'll see the Sahajiyas, even in Vrindavan, who will claim to be followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. They will even study scriptures and they will even quote from scriptures, Goswami literatures, to justify their frivolous behavior. And you will find them very convincing. But only because we have acharyas, we can understand that this is a bogus path. Like you'll see, if you go to Vrindavan, especially Radha Kund, you'll see this Nitai Gaur Radhe Shyam Hare Krishna Hare Ram. So this is like a nonsense concoction. So these kind of things will happen if we compromise on the teachings given by the acharyas as they are. Okay. Text 13. Tasyanu gunan shlokan gayanti.
Tasyanugunan shlokan gayanti.
Aho bhuvah sapta samudravatya.
Aho
Aho
bhuva
bhuva
sapta
sapta samudravatya.
Dvipeshu varsheshva adhipunyametat.
Vipeshu varsheshu
adhipunyametat
adhipunyametat.
Gayantri yatratya janamurare.
Gayantri yatra janamurare.
janamurare.
Karmani bhadranya avataravanti.
Karmani bhadranya
Avataravanti.
Yes.
Prabhu,
Yes, please.
translation and purport by His Divine Grace from Prabhupada. Translation. Learned scholars chant about the transcendental qualities of Lord Rishabdev in this way. Oh, this earthly planet contains 7 seas and many islands and lands, of which Bharatavarsha is considered the most pious. People of Bharatavarsha are accustomed to glorifying the activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his incarnations as Lord Rishabdev and others. All these activities are very auspicious for the welfare of humanity. Purport. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, Bharata Bhumite Haila, Manushya Janma Yara, Janma Sartaka Kari, Kara Para Upakara. As stated in this verse, Bharatavarsha is most pious land. Followers of Vedic literature understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his different incarnations, and they are privileged to glorify the Lord by following the directions of the Vedic literature. After realizing the glories of human life, such people should take up the mission of spreading the importance of human life throughout the world. This is the mission of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The word Adipunyam indicates that there are certainly many other pious men throughout the world, but the people of Bharatavarsha are even more pious. Therefore, they are fit to spread Krishna consciousness throughout the world for the benefit of all human society. Sri Madhavacharya also recognizes the land of Bharatavarsha, Viseshad Bharatya Punyam. Throughout the world, there is no question of Bhagavad Bhakti or devotional service, but the people of Bharatavarsha can easily understand the devotional service of the Lord. Thus, every inhabitant of Bharatavarsha can perfect this life by discharging Bhagavad Bhakti and then preaching this wealth throughout the world for the benefit of everyone. Hare Krishna.
Krishna, thank you very much, Prabhu. भारत भूमि ते हाइले मनुष्य जन्म जार जन्म सार्थक करी कर परोपकार. So if you are born in the land of India, it's your duty to know Krishna and then to preach. Prabhupada used to say that Indians should focus on Krishna consciousness. India should not focus on this engineering and technology, which is so much nonsense really. We can see here in the West, which is like the perfection of all engineering and technology, people are so miserable. Bodily, they may be in a very comfortable situation, but mentally they are all completely messed. Nobody's mind is actually straight. That's why you see, like in America, they have identified some 110 types of genders or something. So all this is kind of nonsense, because there is no purpose of life. What is technology? It's Shilpa Kala. Prabhupada used to call it. It's Shilpa. That means it is just Shudra. Like Shudras in the society, they make all kinds of implements. They make tools, they make pots, pans, they make tables, chairs, and so many things. Shudras, that's Shudra's job. So in the previous ages, Sutas were the ones who would make rathas and who would drive them. In today's age, we call them by the name of Honda, Toyota, Mercedes. And we think, oh, Rolls-Royce and Mercedes are so royal. But actually, they are Shudras. And actually, they are even more degraded than Sutas and Shudras because they are made from obnoxious substances like steel, metal, base metals. Like in previous ages, the chariots or rathas, they would be made of wood and they would be decorated with silver, gold, and other ornaments. And there are rules for Vastu actually. Like for example, for a chariot, the rule is that it should be made of living material like wood and some like gold, diamond, which are like higher metals, which are not base metals, which are high metals. And then it should be open from all directions so that the prana can flow. And it should only have a covering from the top to protect from the elements. And a person should never travel after the sunset. These are Vedic rules because after sunset is the time of ghosts and goblins. So a pious person should never travel after darkness. Actually, Prabhupada used to follow this rule. Prabhupada would avoid traveling in the dark. And then the vehicle should always be maintained properly. It should be kept clean. But today we see vehicles are covered entirely. They are made of base metal. So prana is completely restricted. Now, even in India, we close all the windows and we use AC. That means we have completely restricted the flow of prana through the automobile. The automobile itself runs on the wheels of rubber and it should be clean, but it is covered with grease and petroleum products. So therefore, it is very unclean. It has plastic materials which are coming from petroleum. It is base material. So you see, in this way, when we are disregarding the rules of the Vedas, the consequences are bound to be there. So therefore, we can understand that this is Shudra society. This is Shudra culture. Kalau Shudra Sambhava. So Prabhupada always used to say that India should never try to aspire to become like the West. The so-called economic development, industrialization, will only make Indians into demons. And then only demons will take birth in India because the land will become demonic. So only demonic souls will take birth. The pious souls will disappear. And we can see that's what is happening. Now, India is the second largest exporter of beef, cow meat in the world. And you see, this is a clear symptom of demonic culture becoming predominant in India. So if we want to reclaim, but India is still Punya Bhumi. The land itself remains pious because that's where the Lord appears. So if Indians wake up and they try to remember their own heritage and try to follow the rules and regulations given in the Vedas, India, the land of India, the atmosphere of India itself will support them. But if we Indians do not do that, then we will be the most condemned people on earth. Hare Krishna. Text 14. Ahuna vansho yashasa vadata.
Ahuna vansho yashasa vadata.
Praya vrato Yatra Puman Purana.
Prayavrato yatra puman purana.
Kritavatara Purushah Sa Adyash.
Kritavatara purushasya adhyash.
Chachara Dharmam Yada Karma Hetum.
Chachara dharmam yad karma hetum.
Yes. Would someone like to read?
May I read, Prabhuji?
Yes, please.
Thank you, Ji. Hare Krishna. Prabhupada Ji ki jai. Translation. Oh, what shall I say of the dynasty of Priyavrata, which is pure and very much celebrated? In that dynasty, the Supreme Person, the original personality of Godhead, descended as an incarnation and executed religious principles that could free one from the results of productive activity. Purport. There are many dynasties in human society wherein the Supreme Lord descends as an incarnation. Lord Krishna appeared in Yadu dynasty. Lord Ramchandra appeared in Ikshvaku or Raghu dynasty. Similarly, Lord Rishabhdeva appeared in the dynasty of Lord King Priyavrata. All these dynasties are very famous, and of them, the dynasty of Priyavrata is the most famous. Thank you, Ji. Hare Krishna.
Oh, what shall I say of the dynasty of Priyavrat, which is pure and very much celebrated? In that dynasty, the Supreme Person, the original personality of Godhead, descended as an incarnation and executed religious principles that could free one from the results of productive activity. So, you see, this is actually very interesting. If you hear, there's a very famous Acharya in the, not Acharya, one of the Shiksha Gurus in the line of Ramanujacharya. So, Acharya Lakshmi Tattacharya, he has passed away now, unfortunately. But he has spoken widely on the topics of dharma and lineages. So that was one of his specializations, talking on the lineage. So actually, even Srila Prabhupada mentions in the 3rd canto of Srimad Bhagavatam that lineage is also very important. It's not that, yes, the holy name can purify, but family lineage also matters. It's a helpful factor. If you are born in a pious family, the preconditions are already there for you to advance in spiritual life. So that's why Srila Prabhupada was very hopeful that in ISKCON many children would become devotees, provided the devotees understand the devotional principles and stick to the rules and regulations of bhakti and dedicate their lives to Krishna. So as we have discussed previously also, this sanskar, the Garbhadan sanskar, this is actually meant to bring about pure population. So Garbhadan sanskar means that the husband and wife, they are now dedicating their lives to Krishna. They're dedicating the womb to Krishna so that one of his own devotees may manifest there. That is the real purport behind Garbhadan sanskar. So these great kings like Ikshvaku, Raghu, Yadu, these kings, they were so pious that all their descendants were very pious, and consequently the Lord himself appeared in these dynasties. But today we see that most of the societies, they're full of Varnasankar. Even Indians, Varnasankar. Like here in the West, we see so many Indian students coming. They are taking to the most degraded habits. Actually, most of the Indian students come to the West to have a lot of meat and have a lot of sex. That's the main reason, really. It's like not that the West has some really cutting edge technology which they learn. I mean, if you really want to learn cutting edge technology, now you should go to China. That's the place, China and Japan. But that's the reason, the Varnasankar. So if we want to avoid Varnasankar, we must understand the principles of religion. We must first understand that our purpose of appearance in this material world is not to enjoy this place, but to serve the Supreme Lord. Actually, so in one of his conversations, Dr. Lakshmi Tattacharya, he explains the same thing. He says that even in the Sri Sampradaya now, many of the boys and girls, they are marrying outside the Sampradaya. Iyengar boys and girls, they are now getting married to Shudras and others. And therefore, their children are also becoming atheistic. The problem is not that the child would be some man-eating Rakshasa. The problem is the child would be atheistic. He'll have no faith in Krishna consciousness. So therefore, at least like in the Madhva and Sri Sampradayas, the family traditions are maintained very carefully. Now, for those of us who come from ISKCON, we may think that it is very orthodox or it is very old-fashioned or too offensive to Mahaprabhu, but that's not the case. These traditions, they could sustain for so long, for thousands of years, simply because they maintained the purity of the institution, which meant that the families were carefully cultivated. Or you can say it's a kind of spiritual eugenics. Because if pure Brahmana boys and pure Brahmana girls are married to each other with proper sanskaras, and they live with proper sanskaras and take up professions which are sattvic, not too materialistic, then there's every likelihood that the children are going to be Krishna conscious or God conscious. And that's how these traditions sustain. Otherwise, very soon, all the spiritual tradition will collapse. Actually, why do people want to marry out of their own position? It's mainly due to lust. Oh, this girl is beautiful, this boy is handsome and rich. Meaning that I just want to enjoy wealth and I want to enjoy the material world. This boy looks good. It doesn't matter whether he's pious or not. He'll keep me satisfied materially. In this way, boys and girls, they become corrupted. Oh, this girl is beautiful. Doesn't matter whether she's chaste or not. I'll just marry her. Then I'll be able to enjoy her body. So in this way, the whole tradition. So we can see that the consciousness behind this kind of thought process is contaminated. And as a result, the children, the generation which will be born, would be Varnasankar. And that's why these traditions are maintained even in India. Like families were carefully selected. Prabhupada also, when he got married, the boy and girl, they were selected. But Prabhupada himself used to say that although I did not like my wife, she was chaste. Now, this is and this was not even, at that time, Prabhupada was not even a devotee, apparently. I mean, Prabhupada had not met Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. But today we see, even in our ISKCON itself, there are people getting married 3 times, 4 times, and again divorcing. So you see, we have to follow the rules and regulations, and then then the holy name will manifest. Our chanting would be pure when our consciousness is pure. That's the purpose. Text 15. Ko nvasya kashtham aparon gacchen manorathenapya abhavasya yogi.
Manorathenapya abhavasya yogi.
Yo yoga maya sprahayatya udasta.
Yo yoga maya sprahayatya yudsta.
Hya asaptaya yena krita prayatana.
Hya tasya yena krita prayatana.
Would someone like to read?
Prabhu.
Yes, please. Yes, Prabhu.
Translation purport by Divine Guest Swami Prabhupada. Who is that mystic yogi who can follow the examples of Lord Rishabhadeva even with this mind? Lord Rishabhadeva rejected all kinds of yogic perfection, which other yogis hanker to attain. Who is that yogi who can compare to Lord Rishabhadeva? Purport. Generally, yogis require the yogic perfections of anima, lagima, mahima, prakamya, prapti, istiva, vastiva, and kama vasayita. Lord Rishabhadeva, however, never aspired for all these material things. Such siddhis, perfections, are presented by the illusory energy of the Lord. The real purpose of the yoga system is to achieve the favor and shelter of the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But this purpose is covered by the illusory energy of Yoga Maya. The so-called yogis are therefore allured by the superficial material perfections of anima, lagima, prapti, and so forth. Consequently, ordinary yogis cannot compare to Lord Rishabhadeva, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Hare
Krishna. Who is that mystic yogi who can follow the examples of Lord Rishabhadeva even with his mind? So, actually, you see, Krishna Bhakta Nishkam Ataiva Shant, Bhukti Mukti Siddhi Kami Shakale Ashant. So, even the yogis, even though sometimes the yogi may not be aspiring for siddhis, the siddhis are wonderful. Like, what is yoga? We see when we are in the preliminary stages of bhakti, We always say, that you practice Krishna consciousness to get out of the clutches of birth, old age, disease, and death. Yogis can do that. Yogis, they're not dependent on the physical body anymore. They directly transcend to the level of subtle body. So yogis, like for example, we see the story of Dadhichi. When the demigods approached Dadhichi for taking his bones, Dadhichi easily gave up his body. He was not attached because he is a perfected yogi. So yogis are able to transcend flesh, at least. But these mystic powers are fantastic. This is becoming smaller than the smallest, heavier than the heaviest, or traveling to any part of the planet just at the more than the speed of mind, meeting any dead relatives. All this is like wonderful. This is the cause of our misery in this world. And their senses become almost perfect. Like in the sense that they can perceive, they become Trikaladarshi, they're able to see time factor, they're able to travel anywhere. So all of this still attaches the yogi to his false ego. So if a yogi is not properly learned, he doesn't really understand the elements of material nature, he will mistake this to be transcendental. So actually, this is like a test of our own Krishna consciousness also. That's why, many times, I gave this homework last month also, that you should write down what do you exactly want from life? What is it that you fear in this life? Write it down and then you'll see your own consciousness. Then you'll be able to work on it. Before you try to treat the disease, you should know what the disease exactly is. So yogis, even though they are able to transcend birth and death, they still become attached, entangled in their own false ego, and they're not able to leave the material domain. The great sages, they are free from birth and death. But every time there's a new creation, they appear within it. That is because, and they are not able to attain pure love of God, because they are not able to mentally give up this attachment to these siddhis at least. Because all the material encumbrances that we are dealing with right now, the death of near and dear ones, our own deaths, bodily discomforts, adhyatmic, adhibhautik, adhidaivik kleshas, yogis become free from all this. So if we think that we want to become free from the fourfold and threefold miseries, then we are still not in a pure stage of existence. A devotee willingly accepts birth, old age, disease, and death. He accepts all the kleshas simply so that he can serve Krishna. Prema pumartho mahan. Hare Krishna. Yes. Any questions or comments? Okay, if not, then we stop here today. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Dandar Pranam, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna. Dandar Pranam ji.